This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time to hear from Elise Marie Collins on how to super age. And before we get started, I just want everybody to see what I have. I have the book. And I am so excited. Oh, it looks like Cindy has the book too. All three of us. So there's no reason not to go out and purchase the book. I just got it delivered today, and I've opened it up and I've looked at a couple of titles on the chapters. And I just want to say that I can't wait to start reading it, because it's not so much that I have to look younger, but it surely wouldn't hurt. So, Elise, introduce your guest and let's get started.
Okay, I'm really excited about today's guest, Cindy Marshall. And she grew up in the 1970s in Green Bay, Wisconsin, so a fellow Midwesterner. Her mom wrote a Whole Foods cookbook, and she became hooked on a healthy lifestyle. At 16, she received an unusual mental health diagnosis. I'll let her tell you more about it because it's an unusual diagnosis that most people, I think, haven't heard of, as far as I know. It's become part of her healing journey. She's also done so many interesting things in her life. She studied and worked as an artist, musician. She was a pizzeria owner with her husband, and she's also a health coach. That's how I met her. We are fellow yoga health coaches, and we studied with the same teacher. I met her in Utah, in Salt Lake City, a few years ago. And we also share a love and interest in studying the lifestyles, habits, and what centenarians do, eat, all the things that they do. So welcome, Cindy. Is there anything else you want to add to your bio today?
That sounds pretty good. I guess there's one other funny fact about myself. Thank you for having me, Elise. And it's so good to meet you too, Karen. And thanks for having me be here. This is really fun. This is my favorite subject to talk about, by the way. So if I'm at a party, this is all I want to talk about is centenarianism. It's just so exciting to me. And it's something I've been obsessed with for most of my life. As soon as I realized that you could hack, biohack your life and you can live longer and better quality life. But the only thing that I'll add that I did in my life that was a pretty profound experience is when I was 19, I moved to California to live in my tent for a year up in the Northern California mountains, Humboldt County. We all know what that's synonymous with the marijuana and the pot, for a lot of pot's grown. But I went to a healing art school there, and I learned so many other incredible modalities like Genshin Jitsu and Shiatsu and massage and traditional Chinese medicine. And, what a great place to be, like, living in a commune, basically, where we grew all of our own food and we had to practice healing each other. And so, yeah, it was pretty amazing an experience that I'll never forget. And I think that solidified my just excitement and love of learning to heal myself on a really deep level.
Wow, that's amazing. What led you to this place in Humboldt County, and how did you find out about it? Because it may be something I've never heard of, and I don't know if it still exists, but tell us a little bit more about that.
So it was called Heartwood Institute. I don't think it's running now. Maybe you've heard of it, but one of my sisters, I have 4 siblings. I have 3 sisters and a brother. I'm the middle child. And my sister Rochelle, so I'll say this kind of funny little tidbit. I think all 5 kids, we all went searching for love and learning to love ourselves. We all had a different kind of experience there. And then we just went to find our people, find our tribe, looking for that self-love. Right out of high school, everyone just scattered. And my sister Rochelle joined the Grateful Dead movement. And she was traveling all over the world and all over the United States, just van life. And she's the one that told me about it because she landed there and she went from I don't know, vagabond to one of the head cooks there. And so she was like, Cindy, do you want to come and join me? And she was actually even more hardcore than me. She was living right on the ground, not even in a tent, until she got Lyme disease. Um, she got bit by a tick and then on her face, and she ended up curing herself of that. But so I went to live with her. I ended up being the sprout grower for the whole school. And then I also cleaned all the bathrooms in exchange for getting to learn these really amazing healing modalities. So yeah, it was a wild time, a time of hitchhiking a lot. We did a lot of hitchhiking. It was about an hour drive from the top of the mountain down, but we were pretty much isolated. And I remember coming back into the world after living there, and it was so strange to have just forgetting about just grocery stores and all of these different things. We just didn't think about it. And there was only a payphone, one payphone there, but everyone's,
Wow.
yeah.
Before cell phones.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they'd even get reception, but that brings up something really interesting, because I know from studying the blue zones that all of the blue zones, except one, when we can discuss that, but most of them, there's 5, by the way, and blue zones are places where there's a concentration of adults that live to be 100 years. For the most part, they're all isolated places, which is very interesting. And Cindy's nodding her head if you're listening to the audio version of this podcast. So you're living isolated, and modern life does not, it's not the best thing for living to 100 years. So I wonder if you could expound upon that. I'm sure you can. And maybe how we can, my vision is to create our own little mini blue zones in our worlds. And as we're both yoga health coaches, that's something I try to do with my clients. Get yourself surrounded by sort of a team, a group, maybe family, may not, it could be families of choice, but tell us a little bit more about that, about being isolated, but not alone, or your
Yeah,
experience.
I have a lot of thoughts on this because that's what I've found to be the most successful. And I think this is why our family was really successful in being pioneers. I mean, we were I went to Catholic school. So to go into Catholic school with my recycled bread bag and my bread made from scratch from the flour that my mom ground, and then to have my hard-boiled egg and my bag of sprouts and my whole wheat bread sandwich with peanut butter, and sitting next to someone in the class with the Twinkie, a Oscar Mayer, whatever, bologna sandwich, a chocolate milk, and Cheetos, right? So just in that we had this bigger family. I think it's, there was like that safety in numbers kind of a thing. And if you look at that now, if you take that out even bigger, right? Because you said, and at one point I was obsessed with finding a tribe of people to live with who had like and similar values. And I even traveled all over the United States living in communes and doing migrant labor. And each time I wasn't finding the exact combination of people who were like me, but you sort of have to recreate that in these little pockets. And when you talk about, we expand even out farther, right? Macroly looking at this, the micro macro. So we live in big industry, big food industry, big addiction industry, where our food is hijacked with excitotoxins, with these bliss points, they call them. These scientists are in labs 24/7 looking for that perfect combination of excitotoxins, fat, sugar, and salt to hit those bliss points. And so we're being hijacked, in our this American culture, especially for this, sad American diet life. And then it's like to pretty soon regular fruits and vegetables and these single food ingredients, like just eating, an orange or having just legumes or something, aren't as exciting as that because we've been hijacked. So we have to think about how can we create community around other people who are getting excited about eating really simply, getting our palates and our brains back to just what food is really supposed to taste like. And believe me, I've struggled with food addiction, and especially from being raised where I wasn't allowed to have even maple syrup or honey in the house. My mom was anti-packaged food. Every single thing was made from scratch, and it was really extreme. And so I developed like almost an addiction to wanting the Skittles, the Doritos, all these things I would see other people getting to have. I wanted just to be able to trick or treat and eat candy and all of that. And so I spent a lot of my life trying to figure out how to not be so extreme. Like I'd go from being really healthy, and I was even doing cleanses back in high school. One of my first purchases I ever made was a champion juicer when I was 16, so I went from this really extreme, and then it was like the Catholic, evil or, saved kind of a thing, where I would then go buy 10 candy bars at the grocery store. And, having to live in this world where our brains are hijacked, and hijacked also by the addiction industry, telling us that we're powerless and we have no control. And, that's like really commonplace to binge. And especially with, 70% of Americans being overweight, right? It's just like common, normal. And so really having to find that middle ground, but sort of, I went off on a tangent, but I do think we're very, very, very affected by the culture we live in. And so how do we create rules for ourselves that are gonna help us to live long and beautiful and healthy? And I love the concept of the health span, right? Not just a lifespan, to have a long health span while we sort of swim upstream, in a culture that's really different from how to get, to that long, healthy health span.
Thank you for that. And thank you for sharing about your journey and being honest and vulnerable. I really appreciate it. Did you have any questions, Karen?
As I listen to you talk, Cindy, it takes me to my weekly grocery shopping, which I get very frustrated at because my husband is type 2 diabetic, and we try to avoid any added sugar. And you go up and down the aisles, and everything has added sugar to it. Even what is so-called sugar-free has sugar syrups. Okay. And you're right. We live in a very addictive society. We are, we are very overweight. And I wonder what, the average person thinks when they know, hey, I'm diabetic, my spouse is diabetic, they can't eat these things. And every week when I go in, it's like I keep reading labels and trying to figure it out and being as natural as possible. But again, he grew up in a home where, he did have his Twinkies in his lunchbox. And he still wants those things. And so I try as best I can to bake at home and bake with proper ingredients for him. But again, that takes a lot of time and energy. So I wish the industries would hear what you're saying, because this is not good for any of us.
Mm-mm. No, and it won't change because there's so much money there. And then we have the pharmaceutical industry. So after everyone gets sick, and believe me, I have a sister who had a late stage cancer. She's okay now, but she's 4 years out. But she had stage 3B anal cancer. Okay, so I've been through this incredible journey with her, and but I've seen this other side of, it costs $100,000 to die from cancer. And so it's just money, money, money. And, just big pharma, they're not going to, until we have like a completely different health industry that's based on prevention, because it has to do, if we have a government health model that wants the people to be healthy and they don't profit from it, then suddenly all this incredible information will come in for how to prevent illness and how to look at, the body, mind, and spirit and how to keep those things in balance to prevent these imbalances, right? These diseases. And so, but until then, that's not going to happen. So we do have to do the best we can, of course, aiming for a B- at all times. Because whenever we try to be too extreme about something, that's what backfires. When we try to like go on these diets, right? And this is why I'm all about the meal plan for life. No more diets, no more anything like that. Because anytime you restrict, then you're going to crave and want to binge or, purge. And so always feeling satisfied is why I teach healthy and satisfying subs for sugar, because we have to feel satisfied. And we also so this is one of the things that hangs up in my house. It's How to Live to Be 100. It's 2 laminated. And I look at this all the time. This sits in but I wrote this out, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 years ago. And it's eating habits, healthiest foods, and healthiest lifestyles. And if you look at the habits of the centenarians, right, they celebrate, they enjoy their favorite foods and celebrate from time to time. They have rich foods from time to time. And I am all about hacks for eating healthier and to keep it, of course, and also giving yourself lots of permission to, celebrate and have these sweet treats once in a while. But the problem is most people, when they eat these, then our brains are hijacked, and then we want more and more and more. And the thing that I've found about it, and this is one of the things that really helps me, is I never actually get satisfied. So I could eat a whole entire thing of Oreos and I could still not feel satisfied. And there's a lot of reasons behind that. One, there's usually an emotional craving. So if you look at everything in terms of processes and substances, okay, there's processes and substances. So like overworking, scrolling, gambling, shopping, okay, all these are processes. And we look at the substances: sugar, caffeine, alcohol, nicotine, drugs. They're usually covering up these processes and substances that cover up a root issue, a root feeling. It could be a feeling of loneliness, grief, anger, sadness, loss, okay? And so there's a couple different things we have to do. Is the Oreo is never going to heal that feeling of loss. And so one of the habits that I teach, I have 10 really different habits than we were originally taught from Kate Stillman, who I love. And I still incorporate all of her habits into my program in a different way. But I'm really about looking at root trauma. I'm about looking at attachment style. I'm about really healing all the way down to the root. But the other thing that's really, really important is we're not going to love ourselves thin. We have to also learn how to hijack our brain. And so I love the teacher Glenn Livingston. He has a book called Never Binge Again. It's fabulous. And then he has 45 binge triggers. And you can actually also study to become basically an overeating coach and a binging coach. And I'm actually going to take his program soon. But I have his workbook too, and you can actually do the whole thing yourself from his workbook. And he gives away his book, Never Binge Again, for free, by the way. I think you just have to download it on Kindle off of Amazon. But anyway, he talks about how our reptilian brain, all it cares about is, should I eat it, should I kill it, or should I mate with it? And I would actually add, should I run from it too? It doesn't care about your, weight loss goals or your energy levels or your life purpose, right? And we have to look at, how do I so that it's kind of like we have to take it over by actually getting really mad. We have to activate our neocortex, right? We have to activate our prefrontal cortex, our higher thinking brain that wants these things for ourselves, that wants to feel good in our body, that wants to feel like we're aging gracefully, that wants to feel pain-free, that wants to have financial freedom, that wants to be free from that horrible feeling that we're out of control with food, right? And how we do that is we actually need to dominate. So instead of loving ourselves to death, we need to dominate our reptilian brain. And how he does that is he he calls his inner brain, everyone has their own word for it. He calls his reptilian brain his inner pig. Some people, if you don't want to name it something nice. So some people maybe call theirs their junkyard dog or whatever. Okay, you can name it anything you want. But what he says is he calls them pig squeals. When he's at the grocery store and he sees the Doritos, he hears a little pig squeal. When he rides by Dairy Queen or a fast food restaurant, he hears a pig squeal. And he's like, get back in your pig. He says like, and then he hears these little other pig squeals are like, come on, you worked so hard today. You deserve it. Come on. You eat healthy most of the time. I think you can have a cookie once in a while. All these pig squeals. Okay. He's studied this for so long and even funded his own huge study around this that he paid for himself. And he's mastered it because he himself is a psychotherapist who also used to be, severely obese. So he knows it firsthand, but he says, shut up, pig, get back in your cage. I don't let farm animals tell me what to do. And he cages the pig. And he teaches you how to really come up with this plan, which I can talk all day about this. But basically, you come up with, it could even be one never statement. So one never statement. And we're so afraid to commit to nevers. Yet we'll never masturbate in public. We'll never have sex in public. We'll never have a bowel movement in public. You know what I mean? We do say never all the time. We also say always all the time. So it's like, for instance, so he has these 4 categories: never, always, conditionals, and unrestricted. So for instance, my eating plan now is I'll never eat past 6 p.m. I'll always eat 2 meals a day and I'll always drink water in between my meals. But then my unrestricted is, right now I'm drinking plain cacao. But I can have kind of like coffee substitutes, or I can have hot tea. And then, anyway, you get really, 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 really clear because we're going against we're going against these big things, big food industry, big addiction industry. And we have to be really, really clear, just like you would to a child when you tell them you can never cross the street without holding on to someone's hand. Of course, they learn, they'll be able to do that.
Yeah, I can relate to that. And I was going to pick up my, I have a Chihuahua, if you're listening, and she is very fierce. So I think it's my inner Chihuahua. And I often think about that because your amygdala is that part of your brain that hijacks you and goes crazy. She's a rescue and was very traumatized. She's calmed down, but I can totally relate because I cannot just let her run wild, because she literally will chase kids and adults and scare them, and she'll try to bite them. She doesn't harm them, but that is scary. So I can't just be like, hey, my little sweetie. She will not respond when she's in that heightened state. And as a yoga teacher, I've seen that happen a lot too, where especially I teach calming classes and restorative yoga classes. And if someone comes to class where they get triggered for whatever reason, I can't just tell them lie down and everything will be okay. I have to have certain techniques, or even just let them leave. Like I literally once had somebody leave one of my restorative classes. Imagine there's 20 people lying on bolsters and pillows, blissfully breathing. And this guy goes, oh my God, I need some opium or something like that. And I just was like, okay, here's the door, sure, go get your opium. Because something was going on with him. I did my best to help him, but sometimes when you force yourself into that state, it does not happen, because our nervous system is just triggered by, like you said, I think I never heard it that way, but kill, run, eat, mate. And if we're trying to do one of those things while we're trying to relax, we're not going to kill, run, or eat or mate in a yoga class.
Yeah, it's like trying to meditate while being chased from a tiger or something. And I like your analogy of the Chihuahua. It's like anytime you hear these little whispers, he calls them piggy whispers too, but you could be like these little doggy barks, where it's like barking, come on, you deserve this, you need this, it's just once in a while, And I wanted to say, I'm not that extreme, because like I have my conditionals, which is like once a week I can eat late, like you can create these conditionals. So it's like, and guess what? You get to create your own rules. And then, what's so cool about it is if you want to change a rule, and I'm all about hacks. I know we all know what we need to do, but we don't know how to do it. And so every single thing that I bring to my coaching clients is tools for how to do it. Because we all want to eat healthier. We all want to feel good. We all want to stop eating the junk, right? But if we don't know how, then we could say we want to do it for the rest of our lives and it's just not going to happen. So what I like about his creating this never, always, unrestricted and conditionals plan is that anytime you want to change it, because I started off saying I'm never going to eat sugar again. Okay. And I quit drinking 2 years ago because I wanted to see if I could feel all my feelings. And I successfully did it for a year. And I'm like, wow, I'm going to try it again. So now I thought, well, can I do sugar? Can I do no sugar? And when I realized it was too restrictive for me and it triggered me. And so the thing is if you make a rule that seems too hard, you have to hold on to it for 24 hours and then you can change your plan after 24 hours. But if you let yourself just, oh, actually, I'm going to add sugar to my list, in the last minute, and we could just go forever and our pig could completely take over, our inner pig or whatever, your inner chihuahua, right?
It's like it builds trust. Okay, go ahead, Karen. But it sounds like you're building trust, because that's one thing we've all done that. And that's what one of my teachers says, we might say, oh, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this. And we start to not believe ourselves. And then that's a dangerous place. I'm not sure how it works with the chihuahua, but something else is taking over. And that's a foundation. I also was thinking, it's like the hierarchy of needs too, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We've got to get that foundation to go to the top. I mean, the top is important too. It's purpose, it's inspiration, but the bottom is so key. And then I think Karen has a question or comment.
Well, I've been going to physical therapy for pelvic floor treatment. And last week when I went, my body had a bad experience. I didn't, but my body reacted poorly. And I journaled it just to make sure that I wasn't trying to let the situation, as you say, hijack me and not continue with treatment. And I went in yesterday and I explained it to the therapist. And she looked at me, she said, I wish all my patients would do this, because typically when you get hijacked like that, you just want to stop. I've been in pain for 4 days. I'm not supposed to be in pain. This isn't working. And so we modified treatment yesterday. And all of a sudden I woke up this morning and it's like, I'm back to where I need to be. And so I like what you're talking about when you say, yes, you can modify, you can make those changes if you need to, but don't make those changes just because, oh, right now it doesn't feel good to do this. So I'm not going to do it. And so today when I was journaling how I was feeling this morning after my morning exercises, I looked at it compared to last week and it was like, I'm in a totally good place. So it's not easy, but I think when you keep those little notes that you can go back and say, it's working, it's not working, what isn't working, and then go from there.
I'd love to comment on what you just said because I think it's really powerful. And it's everything that I've learned about trauma over the last couple of years. I've been really obsessed with studying like the vagal nerve and looking at trauma. And I love the therapist and writer Resmaa Menakem at Resmaa. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but he wrote a book called My Grandmother's Hand. And anyway, and that's looking at ancestral trauma, which I also really like to look at. I personally also got pelvic floor physical therapy a couple of years ago because when I was doing jumping jacks, jumping on the trampoline with my kids, I'm like, whoa, okay, mama's not dry, And I have had 2 kids, and I started to do, and I had to have these internal exams, and it was kind of traumatic. And that's the thing. The thing about trauma is you don't get to choose what your body considers trauma.
Right.
What, you don't get to say, oh, I'm tougher than this, or I'm going to be gritty, or I'm going to. So just like you said, our body embeds a trauma code inside of our system somewhere, and all it cares about, so it has to do with your limbic brain again, your reptilian brain, okay? And your lizard brain, all it cares about is has two questions. Is it safe or not safe? And if it feels unsafe, whether you like it or not, it's going to shut down and you're going to have a trauma response. And the only way, and that's why we have to settle the body in order to settle the mind. That's the only way that we'll ever settle our mind, is we have to go through the body. And if we look at like what is an emotion, you know, even just the word emotion, it applies movement, kinesiology, you know, sensation. It's a sensation. It's a neurocluster of feelings and, you know, all of these things. It's a neurocluster of basically sensations in our body that we put together, and then we call it an emotion. But we have to look at facing and really starting to identify where that trauma is in our body, which is so incredible that you journaled about it. And then we have to slowly, very slowly, Dr. John Levine, who is a trauma specialist, and he has healingtrauma.org, and he has this, you know, he teaches somatic experiencing, okay? And the word he uses for it is titrate. So we have to slowly touch upon that embedded trauma response very, very carefully. And he studied polar bear. He studied, how did he kind of figure this out? He's like, how are animals not traumatized? You know, they experience trauma all the time. Why are the humans traumatized? And when he looked closely at how they, you know, removed the trauma from their body. So he looked at this polar bear who was being chased by scientists to be tranquilized. And after they got it down and they tranquilized it, as the polar bear was coming to, it actually completed the trauma cycle in its body. So what happens is your palms will get sweaty. You get really, really hot. You want to move, you tremble, you shake. And it let itself do that. And it even, while it was on the ground sideways, it would start to run, like it was back to when he was being run after, and it was biting over its shoulder. And it went through and it completed the entire experience. And that's why it's so important then when we are traumatized. So even though you didn't choose to feel traumatized by that, to let your body shake, to let it get hot. Don't sit on your hands, let your hands shake. Don't fan yourself off. You have to actually like release the trauma in your body by completing the cycle. So it's pretty amazing when we actually trust our bodies to complete. Absolutely. You know, how incredible that is. And I wonder if the Centenarians knew some of this, you know, if they knew to just let themselves tremble and shake. I don't know, but it would be an interesting question to ask. Maybe Elise knows more about that.
I don't know for sure, but it seems like that is part of it, maybe not codified. An example I can think of is Dow Portion Lynch, who passed away in February 2020. I mean, one of the things that I always think about that not many people remark about her, I don't know if you know her, but anyway, her first name is T.A.O. Portion Lynch. And she was the oldest living yoga teacher when she was alive. She grew up in Pondicherry, India, where it was a French colony. Her mother died in childbirth, and that's what I think about. So that's a huge trauma. And I don't know exactly what she did, but she started practicing yoga at the age of 8, and she was always into yoga. She's lived an incredible life. She marched with Gandhi when she was, I think, 11 or 12. Yeah, it's like somebody called her like the Forrest Gump of yoga or something. And she was an actress in Hollywood. So she's easy to find on the internet. And I think it was her yoga practice that helped her get through her husband dying. I mean, for women living a long life, you're much more likely to outlive your if you're married to a male spouse, you're much more likely to outlive them. And actually, the week before we usually do this podcast every 2 weeks, but we did the last one a week ago because I'm not going to be here next week. We had someone talking about creative grief work. So I think this all ties together. It's kind of like our monthly theme. And living a long life, you are going to have to process a lot. So maybe tell us a little more about that and anything else you want to say. I know you're really into the mindset and the thinking of centenarians, because I think we crave these ideas because our Western culture is so far removed from the mindset of centenarians. We have, our life expectancy is like 20 years less than 100. Some people do live to be 100, and we're all living much longer. But talk about that if you could, the mindset of centenarians.
Oh, I'd love to. It's something I am obsessed with. I'll just show you, one of my favorite centenarians. I don't know if you know this guy. Yeah. It's like another, so he has a book called How to Live Well into Your Second Century. This guy would just start careers. It's like, I'll start a new career at 80, I also love the extraordinary, I'm sure you've seen this, extraordinary centenarians in America. I just love reading about people who have overcome incredible challenges and how they did it. My dad's dad is one of 21 kids. His dad lived to be 101 with 21 children.
Wow.
He was a farmer, and his was all mindset. He did drink some crazy concoction every morning that was kind of like a smoothie or something. But for the most part, he smoked all day and all night and drank all day and all night. Alcoholic, lived to be 101. And it had to do with mindset. And one of the things I've been asking people lately is, how old do you think you'll live to be? And so many people are like, oh, I'm hoping 60s, and I'm like, what? And some people are like, well, if I live to be 80, I'll be happy. And you start to really think about, like, what's your number? And I realized my number was pretty low. It was like 85. And I had to really start believing I could live to be longer. And so my new number is 112. And I see that number all the time in my mind's eye, and I'm reaching for it. And I'm obsessed with trying to get there. And we live very different lives when we think we're going to be living a long time. When we think, and so one of the things I wanted to talk about was beliefs, because our beliefs drive our thoughts and feelings, which drive our actions, which then drive the results we get. So if we believe we're going to die in our mid 60s, well, then what kind of choices and what kind of thoughts and feelings are we having right now that are going to get these results?
Right.
So there's so many people, and I, just being in the cancer world, who would hear that from a doctor, you're going to die in a year. Okay. And literally their cancer was cured and they still died on the day their doctor told them to. I saw it so many times, I can't even tell you. So we have to believe that we can do better. This really kind of cheesy book, but I like it. Jack Canfield's book, The Success Principles. He talks all about these beliefs, and it's so fun to read. Like, this potato farmer competed in this marathon, and everyone laughed at him, and he was wearing just like boots, and he never even thought really anything, he didn't know anything. So sometimes what we don't believe also can be a success. So he didn't realize that all these like ultra marathon runners, they sleep at night for 6 or 7 hours. He just kept running and only sleep 1 or 2 hours, and he won. He'd never ever even tried to compete in a race ever in his whole life. But when he's out there farming, he has to gather sheep and run after sheep. So he knew he could do it. But sometimes not believing things is also, really, it's just fun to look at. So I was kind of looking at, like, okay, this downward arrow technique. If I believe I'm going to die young, like my mom, dad, grandpa, uncle, sister, whatever, or I'm going to die a slow and painful death, probably cancer, like this person, that person, right? Or I won't live long, so I'm just going to party now and smoke as many cigarettes as I can, and just whatever. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to see what happens. Well, then, if we're like telling ourselves that we're going to be surprised if we make it to 70, then what does that mean? So it's like, and you kind of do these downward arrows techniques. So I kind of just did it. So if I was going to die young, I thought I was going to die young, and I truly believe that. And I truly believe that everyone I know gets cancer. And then I looked at, okay, well, what's below that? Well, I'm not healthy. I don't have good genes, right? And we all know about gene clocks and and epigenetics and how we can alter those. But let's just say we didn't believe any of that. And we thought we have bad genes. And so we keep looking at it, and it's like, and maybe it comes down to some other deep underlying belief that you're not good enough. You're not good enough to eat healthy organic food because that's only for like, these kind of people. Or maybe you don't trust yourself. So why even try to even go against the food and drug industry? Or you don't deserve to treat yourself well. I have this magnet on my fridge that says organic food, or what my grandparents called food. And it's like we say, oh, that organic food's for like, those people over there, the rich people or whatever. Meanwhile, I will say, I was going to say one little point about that really quick. The reason that we ate healthy growing up is we were poor. My dad was a barber. We had 5 kids in our family, and it was cheaper to buy everything in bulk. So if you wanted the cheapest diet, if you want to say that organic food's expensive, if you want to eat the best, just go to your local farmer's market and just like buy only bulk grains, and you will, because packaging is what costs so much. But anyway, that's a side tangent. So basically you start to look at what are these deeper underlying issues? Do I feel like I don't deserve to live a long life? Is there, is it because then I'll have to face making these changes and then I'll have to work on myself and I don't really want to put in the work? What is it really? And it's just like, I guess I'm challenging everyone to look at where the resistance is coming from. For most people, I will say it's this: they're overwhelmed. And an overwhelmed mind will always say no. So we have to look at finding a way to be whelmed, not underwhelmed, not overwhelmed. How can we get to be whelmed? And if you want, I don't know if we have enough time for this, but I do have a bunch of hacks for how you can incorporate really small action steps into living a long and healthy life based on the formula to be a centenarian and all the things that centenarians do to live a long life, if you want to hear them. But I don't know if we have time for that.
Okay, well, we have a little bit of time. I love that, being whelmed. And I was wondering if you could hold up the book, Living Beyond 100, because I think for the listeners, we need to say the name. Bernardo.
Beyond 100 by Bernardo Lapallo, Lapallo. He's dead now, but he had 3 different careers in his life. And I love how one of them, I think he started at like 80 or 90. Crazy.
Yeah.
We make different choices if we think we're going to live a long time.
He isn't super ager. There's a blurb on him. So I know him. I couldn't remember his last name, but Bernardo. And I also remember his father. He came to the United States with his father from Brazil, I believe. And yeah, he was really, I can still remember some of his quotes. He worked on a cruise ship and he would make all these like rich foods. And this was like in the 1920s or something. And he would make food for the passengers, but then he would only eat vegetables, and people called him the rabbit or something because he only ate whole foods. So that stuck in my mind.
It reminds me of my husband because he's a really hardcore vegan. He has been for 5 years, but we own and operate a pizzeria. And sometimes he said he feels like a drug dealer. He's like, because if you have meat and dairy and alcohol and sugar on your menu, everyone comes for their fix. But we do have like farm to pizza. We are the biggest buyer of local organic produce. We basically, and we use a sourdough, which makes it really hard. We use a biga, which is an Italian sourdough starter. And so every single piece of bread and all of our sandwiches and every pizza is fermented. And so it does have those probiotics in it. And we make it as healthy as we can, because I think that's another fun thing to do, is these healthy substitutes. And so you don't feel deprived. But we've won Best Pizza in Missoula for 15 years. The line out the door every night. It is absolutely slammed. And it's beautiful food put on a pizza. And if you really think about it, it's kind of like an open-faced sandwich. Absolutely. And you can still make it vegan, and then we have a gluten-free crust that we make in-house. But he sometimes does feel like that because he himself, he's been on his own journey for healing. And so, he feels amazing. He's lost 50 pounds. He feels incredible. He does yoga every day. And now he's able to do that. Whereas before he had so much inflammation and his knees were seizing up. He's 54. he was starting to feel the effects of aging. He's totally reversed aging and not eating, the food that he feeds everyone, but he still eats, like all of our ingredients, just done in a different way on a vegan pizza.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I didn't know you still were running the pizzeria when I announced it, but that's fabulous. And it sounds like it is a service to the community. I mean, healthy pizza, it's kind of like a bridge. We need those bridges. Maybe you could give us like 2 or 3, because I'd love to have you back on sometime, maybe, a few months later, and we'll probably talk again, because it's so much fun to talk to you. And for those of you listening, Cindy holds up these laminated How to Live to 100. I don't know if you sell those, but they look really intriguing. But could you give us a couple, 2 or 3?
2 or 3. And this is all about making longevity habits easy, obvious, attractive, and satisfying. So one of like the most obvious things is to market your kitchens to you. So, cutting fruits and vegetables and keeping them at eye level in clear Pyrex containers in your fridge, marketing your cupboards and your counters to you, hiding away, right? And then doing the reverse of making the bad foods, not obvious. So hiding those away or not even having them in the house. But like one of my favorite things is I have a smoothie basket. And inside my smoothie basket because I love using seeds. There's, you can use seeds for hormone balancing and all kinds of things, but I incorporate so many seeds into my smoothies, but I have a cute basket that's in the cupboard that I just pull out. And of course, I'm all about, I call them blender drinks because I often drink my blender drinks warm just for better digestion. But just being able to have all of these labeled jars inside this beautiful little basket. And so it makes making a smoothie easy. It's not like, oh gosh, I have to go and get all this. It's like pull out the basket and just start throwing stuff in the blender. It just makes it so easy. And then 15-minute meals. I am all about meals. So I have a meal planning system that I've created and that I teach to people. And it's all about 15 minutes shopping total, and then 15-minute lunches and dinners. Because if it's not easy, we ain't doing it, right? It has to be easy. And so, and I didn't know how to cook. I had to teach myself to cook. My mom was an amazing cook, but she had 5 kids and she didn't have time to teach us. So I had to slowly learn how to cook. And then now I just have so many little hacks for keeping it easy, but there's so many great recipes. Just look up on Google and say 15-minute. There's so many amazing websites that I'd love to share, vegan websites and vegetarian websites, but also meat websites. There's no but yeah, so just make it easy. And just, one of just my easiest trick for shopping is to plan out 2 or 3 meals for the week. And then as you write the ingredient that you need, have it in the separate category in the grocery store. So I put all my fruits and vegetables in one category, all my bulk food in one category, and I have stacks of these. I'm going to hold this up, but your readers can't or they can hear this, but I have stacks of these, and this is how I plan my meals. So I put on the top, I have my recipes for the week, and then I have everything that I'll need for that written out, and I have this on front and back display. So, and then I go to the grocery store, and this little piece of paper, which is my shopping list, gets folded up, gets put into my phone case because that's my wallet. And then I can just pull it out, quickly shop within 15 minutes. I can bust it out without having to look through, recipe and try to whoops, we forgot the, asparagus. We got to go back, it's just fast. And then I get home and I put this on the fridge and I know what I have the ingredients for. I have all the ingredients to make, let me see, what did I do this week? I have all the ingredients to make vegan spaghetti and meatballs, tofu scrambled eggs, a spinach chickpea curry, and a crispy potato veggie stick. I have everything to make those things, and it's just easy and fast and makes you want to cook when you have all the ingredients on hand, and all of my meals are 15 to 30 minutes at the most to cook. So keep it easy.
Wow, those were such great tips. I can't believe you have 10 of them. We will have to have you back on. And I love it.
I have 30 of them.
Okay,
So
30.
we're
Okay.
gonna have to. I went through every single habit of the Centenarians, and I have a little life hack for each one. So if you ever want to have me on, we can go through that.
You can be a regular guest. I love it. And I love that it's paper, because I know when I put the list on my phone, I'm so ADD, I start going like, oh, look, a text. And then 20 minutes in the grocery store, I might be, oh, I got to do a post on Instagram.
Yeah, and then each time your phone, you have to like log in, and it's like try to keep the light on, and it keeps going on to dark, and then it's like, yeah, it has to be easy. And I make a stack of those, and I have a template that I can send to you, and you can share it with the readers. I have a template, and you can just go one time to Kinko's or FedEx, print off 100 of them, get them cut there, and I keep them in my car and in my house. And so anytime I feel like just quickly looking up a couple websites, there's so many amazing ones. But you just look up a couple of websites, pick out the very first recipe that calls to you, write it down, and you're ready to just shop like a mad woman or man.
Incredible. This has been such a great interview, packed with information, packed. There's going to be so many tips. And tell us, as we close out, I'm going to let Karen say final words. Tell us where we can find you, Cindy.
I'm at www.beyondwellliving.com, and there's 3 L's in that in a row. And you can find out how to be in my year-long coaching program. I also offer 12-week coaching program. And also lots of one-on-ones. I work with a lot of clients one-on-one because they don't feel comfortable in groups. And then I teach a monthly workshop that's $15 every single month. And actually I'm teaching the next one, that because I think this will probably air later. The next one is in June, on June 24th, Ayurveda 101 at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. But yeah, I teach like low cost workshops, so you can still learn a lot there. And then I do a 3-week cleanse every April and every October, and people have dramatic results because I teach them the whole meal shopping experience, along with people leave feeling like they know what to do from there on out. So I really empower everyone so they don't have to keep doing cleanses. They can just, their life will just be their cleanse. So.
Well, you have been a wonderful guest, Elise. As always, you have a nice core of individuals who bring a different message to us on your podcast. And all the things that you've said today, Cindy, really resonate to many of us because we want things that are easy and quick. We don't want to have to constantly think, what do I need at the grocery store? Can I cook it? Well, what grocery store can I go to? Which one can I go to? Once you get that plan in mind, then it just becomes part of your lifestyle. And that's the only way that these things work. I'll never go on a diet because as soon as you say diet, then you do feel restricted. And when it's part of your lifestyle, it's enjoyable. So thank you very much. And Elise, congratulations on your upcoming graduation. We are so excited. She actually graduated last year, everybody, but she's going to go through the actual ceremony, and we are very, very proud of you. And again, go on Amazon, right? They can get this on Amazon and buy Super Ager. I'll tell you, I've learned so much from Elise, and now I can't wait to start reading it. So thank you very much, and have a great day, everybody. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.